uh, the idea is that the Supreme can do anything, can be in any form. So this expands people's ideas because most people are sort of closed and they don't understand even things they can't see. Of course, a few hundred years ago, they didn't even know about X-rays, infrared, ultraviolet, because they couldn't see it. Then they developed instruments, and then they started thinking, well, maybe there's something beyond what we can see. So Lord Mrgendra is beyond what they can see. But and Radha Krishna, but it's particularly on this day, we want to pray to Lord Mrgendra because he also represents the theists against the atheists. Not that just he's protecting devotees, but he's showing that the theists ultimately conquer over the atheist, because Hiranyakashipu was known as the biggest atheist. And not that only he was interested in material wealth, and materialists, that's all they're interested in is the body and what can give them some kind of satisfaction. But he was an atheist. So when Prahlad Maharaj discussed that what is it he wants, that he told his father that he just wants devotion to the Supreme. So this was, of course, angered the Hiranyakashipu, because he's thinking, I am the Supreme. So the teaching of that is that even if Prahlad Maharaj was in such a bad situation, somehow or another, things work out. So devotees, they learn after a while that if they're actually dependent on Krishna, somehow or another things work out. It's hard to understand. A material formula is something like, okay, you go to high school, you go to college, then you get a good job, then you get a wife. They think that's a formula, and then you will get certain kind of success. So, and it's sometimes it's predictable. You could say that certain people, by percentage, if they graduate from college or they get a graduate degree, that there's a certain percentage that they think things materially can be taken care of. For a devotee, though, things might actually end up, it's unpredictable. He might do so many things, but then ends up suffering. So the devotee takes the suffering as something that's beneficial. And then actually, at least personally, and other devotees have found that, like even yesterday, Rigopati Prabhu mentioned, we lost the airport in L.A., that at that particular point, devotees are thinking, this is like really bad, huge bad. But then now you're saying that this is actually something better because it got devotees out of the airport into the colleges. So similarly, devotees might have some kind of negative, what they think is negative, but for a devotee it's different. For materialists, it's straight karma, laws of karma. It might not be understood by them because it might be from previous lifetime, but still, even though the Bible said it, for every action there's the equal reaction, so they understand that concept. For a devotee, it's different, because Krishna is personally involved, and he doesn't just go by what somebody does, then they deserve. There's certain teachings like that, like basic Jewish teaching is that if you do good, that's the goal, you do good, then you're going to get good. And Christians, sometimes they say by certain works, then it's beneficial. So devotee takes everything as Krishna's mercy, and that's based on faith. And after a while, devotees get realizations, because if you just kept going years and years and years on just faith, then that means this is not really a scientific process. Because scientific process means, like in the laboratory, you do a test and you can do it again and you get certain result. So our teaching is that if you chant the Hare Krishna mantra, then you get a result. We don't say that there is any prerequisite or that it needs some other kind of good works. Of course, the chanting becomes more beneficial when you give up sinful activities and you're chanting in pure mood. But our teaching is that this is a scientific process, and that if people, no matter who they are, they try certain things, they will get a result. We're not teaching karma, that you do certain things and therefore good works, and that's what the goal of life is. The goal of life is love, and ultimate love means an exchange between two people. A lot of people talking about love, they use that phrase, love is all there is, but they don't understand love means an exchange between two. So we're personalists, we can understand that, but impersonalists, they cannot understand. So unfortunately, they're in a situation where they're materially bereft because they cannot have love, because for them everything is one. So there's no fortune there for somebody who's stuck in that kind of situation. So devotees also realize that the ultimate love is to Krishna, but we can realize that even immediately when we first meet devotees, because we see through exchange of, especially if you meet the pure devotee, that there's that exchange. We know this is not just an ordinary material interaction. In the material world, every interaction is based on motivation and what can I get, whereas devotional relationships are based on love. So the teaching of all religions, whatever they are, we see that there are what's called fundamentalists, and then there's which are traditionalists, and they accept everything Scripture exactly. We see that like certain Pentecostal and Christian, and in Jewish there's the Orthodox, but then they have the conservative and they have the Reformed in the Jewish, and in the Christian they'll have the Pentecostal, but then they'll have all the way the other 10 side, I think, like Universalists, Unitarians. They have different things in between. They're using the same Scripture. Actually, that's the basis of any kind of religion, is you have to have the main Scripture. Quran for Muslim, Bible is for the Jewish, the Old Testament, for Christian, both New and Old. So the point is, for any religious movement, are we going to accept everything literally or not? If not, then that's called a reform movement. But as Prabhupada wanted to build a house where everyone could come in, you're not always going to have, if you want to be exclusive, you can do that and have a small group. That's no problem. But there's always these schisms that go on, and people don't want to have their own special thing, and they don't want to accept other people. And it's unfortunate, instead of building a big, like helping Prabhupada increase the house, sometimes they want to separate out into little houses. So we should accept people who get some kind of common platform that no matter if they're liberal or conservative or traditional fundamentalists, that we want to chant Hare Krishna with them and help them and not condemn them or let them think that they're inferior or they're in a wrong teaching or something like that. I don't know if you have any experience of anyone ever saying that to your face, well, this Hare Krishna is nice, but I can't believe all of these fantastic stories. Prabhupada, when he initiated us, he asked for certain vows, and he wanted everybody to take those vows and become initiated, but not that they had to believe literally everything that he taught. So we should accept people like that. There's different levels of understanding. There's the literal, and then there's also the allegorical. So the basic Hindus, they accept these teachings, but they accept them all as allegory. Even the professors and the traditional Hindus, they'll say that we're Hindu, and they'll talk about the mythology. Isn't that correct? They'll still use the word myth. And they're still favorable people, and they'll still come and chant. So for those people, it's good to explain the allegory on their level, not to fight them. But in other words, for, let's say, Northern Sringadev, we teach that God always protects his devotees. And we teach that the devotees will overcome all kinds of situations. So we can preach on different levels, and our understanding is on different levels. We can understand the allegory, and there have been different professors writing about all sorts of scripture and what the deep meaning is, even if they don't accept the literal everything exactly. So it's good for us to accept both, and that way we'll have more understanding instead of being, Prabhupada didn't want like what's called blind followers. A blind follower means somebody who hears something and just parrot, he'll maybe repeat it as like a parrot, but no deep understanding, no realization. So we want to get realizations, and we want deep understandings of how everything in our life is affected by this teaching and by these practices. So in a certain respect, I'm the type that is intellectually crippled because I automatically check out everything, and I want to see if it's scientifically basis and it's proven. But even if you can't prove God on this scientific basis, we have to be able to give people a taste, because by tasting, then they'll appreciate it. So this movement is destined to increase, and this particular temple, for some reason or another, I've been to all sorts of temples. This one is like much higher. There's different kind of energy level. So I appreciate it that I came here, even after I had association of some devotees from this temple. I could tell automatically that, and soon, that there was something good going on. And it wasn't just that they were distributing books. And now that I'm here at the temple, I even appreciate that more. So if anyone had any questions or anything, I'd rather take it like, oh yeah.
You were talking about the literal.
Oh yeah.
You were talking about the literal understanding and the allegorical understanding. You, if I heard and understood you correctly, you were saying that we should be able to accept both. But I'm assuming that you meant as far as accepting the allegorical understanding
Right,
as part of, our strategy to preach to people and, connect with people.
right.
Because, right? I mean,
Yeah, you can accept both, the literal, but the literal doesn't even have the allegory. It's just the facts. Oh, Lord Mrgendra came out of a pillar. He killed Hiranyakashipu and put a Prahlad on his lap. That's the only literal. Everything else, all the stories we get from the Bhagavatam, all the commentaries by the acharyas, they explain different meanings which people would call allegorical. So if we're just accepting literal, it means we're not even referring to the commentaries. I'm talking about the basic scriptural verses, which are sometimes limited, and then the commentaries, like Prabhupada would have one verse, take 2 lines, and then he'll have 3 or 4 pages of commentary. But also, I don't know if you run into that kind of idea, that some people would say certain things, and then you argue with them if they talk about they're on this level of myth or allegory. It might not be useful immediately, just like we don't go out in Sankirtana and tell people immediately, you have to stop all sexual activities except in marriage for procreation. That's not the first thing you tell people. So similarly, at least when I was distributing books a lot and preaching, that people would come, oh, this is myth, or this is just crazy, or whatever they wanted to say. So, but they could get benefit out of it, out of the script, out of these teachings, even if they accept it as allegory and moral teachings or whatever. So we don't want to combat people. We'd rather find out some common ground and work on their level, instead of, because otherwise you get to some kind of Pentecostal type teaching, Jehovah's Witness type, which you can't even talk to these people.
Okay, so let me see if I understood you. So devotees, we accept the literal, like
Yeah.
you said, Lord Mrgendra came out of the pillar and took Hiranyaka. And we accept the interpretation of what that means that we receive from the acharyas.
Right.
Whereas, like, say, people from the Hindu community or
Right,
whatever,
yeah.
they take that as myth. That, they
Right,
don't even
yeah.
accept that that was an actual historical event, so to speak.
Right.
But they'll assign an allegorical understanding to
Right,
it.
yeah.
So we don't want to lock horns with them, because that'll get nowhere. And we don't want to get into a confrontation with them, that's telling them,
Right.
confronting them, saying, no, you're all totally, but rather use that, since they have some interest in the thing, just use it as a way to kind of connect with them and try to help them move forward with that. That's,
Yeah, I think that'd be useful. You probably know better than me, but
yeah, I don't get anywhere when I argue with people. I never win a debate.
right, yeah. So my point is, let's find common ground. Even with devotees, there's all sorts of devotees from different groups or different followings. Then we find out where we have common ground with them. But now so many people are doing the opposite. They say, well, he's devotee or whatever, but we're just going to keep separate.
Do we run the risk of getting watered down, though, by doing that? Because,
No.
No, you don't think so? Okay.
It's, you have your own principles, but you find where's the common ground. There's got to be some common ground. If you want to say, yeah, we'll chant Hare Krishna together, I don't understand why that would be a problem. Even if somebody is from a different sampradaya, if they want to come in and chant together. you're not watering down your philosophy by getting together some common ground and working together. If we're all small it's like these, if you take small threads or a small twig, you can break that twig easily. But when you get a bunch of twigs in a pack, you can't break that. So somehow another, if we can get more strength, otherwise devotees, we see they all struggle to even get a temple renovated. This shouldn't be. So it happened in West 55th Street. And even at that point, there was no big schism. All you had back then, because I was there, Adhikeshwara Swami called me in because they decided they're going to sell the building. And at that point, I had some kind of paralegal skills, and even before I was a lawyer. But the point was, Prabhupada came to New York City. He said it was the most important city in the world. And that's why he came there. He started in Manhattan at 26 Second Avenue. But then the devotees, they increased so much, they needed a bigger place. They went to buy to Henry Street. That's in Brooklyn. But at that point, Prabhupada always was telling devotees, we want to get a temple in Manhattan. So for years, they collected to get a temple in Manhattan. So you might have heard about West 55th Street. Prabhupada called it my skyscraper temple. He was very proud of it. So then in 1978, there was even though devotees were all devotees living in the temple, there's some kind of dispute between Adhikeshwara Swami, who was the in charge, and some other leaders of the movement who didn't like the way he was handling it. So they would say to their disciples, I think you'd be better in Boston, or I think you'd be better in Philly. So what happened was the Sankirtana was huge in New York in 1977, 78, and then it went down like half, down a quarter. And then they said, well, we have to sell the building because they can't get the money to renovate. So you couldn't even get cooperation there, because if Prabhupada was here, you know what would have happened. He would have told all the temples, you send money to New York. New York actually collected for years and sent for their own temple. And they collected a lot of money when they were in Henry Street. I wasn't a devotee there, I visited. And then when they had so much money and they're ready to go buy, Prabhupada told the devotees in New York, send all this money to me immediately. I need it for India, Mumbai Vrindavan project. So devotees who had collected all, and it was for the New York project, they immediately sent all the money to India. But in 1979, when they needed money, nobody stepped forward. See? So that's a problem. I'm not putting fault in anybody. I'm just saying we can see by the result that was a big problem. And everybody, all the devotees back then said, yeah, this is a huge problem, that what happened. So I think we got to have a bigger vision, and that way we can all forward the preaching program. For ourselves, we don't need much. We don't need a big temple, but we want to. If you want to have like a restaurant, a gift shop, you want to have prasadam distribution en masse with a big kitchen. It needs something bigger. So of course, it's better to get some kind of cooperative mood. So that's what I'm trying to preach. I take it as one of my missions to try to mediate all sorts of disputes. Now, a lot of people think lawyers, they just fight on one side versus the other. I don't do litigation, so I'm not that type. like just today, I worked out something. After 7 years, a couple finally, they stopped fighting. They're going to sign on a divorce. Because one of them finally wanted to remarry. Anyways, I like to mediate. And I'm trying to, wherever I go, I try to get devotees together. Even though I always hear these stories about this person and that person, or they're bad or whatever. So that's Prabhupada's mission. He didn't want many international societies for Krishna consciousness. He wanted one. But if you don't change things, I mean, it's already happening. I don't know if you want to hear the details. But things split off. You get the traditionalists in India who want one thing, and then you get some Americans who talk about liberal, different things. There are American liberals, let's say GBC members, and they might want to have, let's say, the female Diksha Guru. Okay, we know that that's a big issue. I don't want to have a schism over that. But, so we want to think big, not small. That's all I'm saying. And there's a tendency always to think, well, we're the best. That's the material consideration. Oh, we're the best of everything, so that means somebody else is not. Or I'm good, somebody else is bad. It always works out that way. You can't be the best if there's nobody that you say is not as good. So those are all material considerations. So was there any other thing? Yeah, back there? Oh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank
yeah.
you for your class. What comes to mind, based on what you're saying, is Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And one of the things that I recall in reading Srila Prabhupada's books is he was extremely critical of all other editions, and in fact ridiculed them and said how they were completely useless and how they were offensive to Lord Krishna, because in fact they did present Bhagavad Gita in an allegorical fashion. Prabhupada was extremely critical about that.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe some of the other devotees here, but I don't recall any purport where Prabhupada presents a particular pastime in an allegorical way. And to your point about King Puranjana, oh, that's true. Yeah, that was an allegory. But that was clearly right from the start. It was presented as an allegorical. But it wasn't something like an incarnation of Lord Krishna. It wasn't like Mrgendra isn't allegorical, or Ram isn't an allegorical story. But Puranjana was clearly...
He would though have some kind of purport that this means this or this means that, or even I saw a lecture today I was looking over briefly for Mrgendra Chaturdashi, and Prabhupada commented that the theists always conquer over the atheists, and this is a meaning of what happened with the Lord Nrsingadev. In itself, it was just one incident for like 5 seconds of Lord Nrsingadev killing Hiranyakashipu. But Prabhupada went on to say what we can gather from that, what it means.
It's more an interpretation. Like an interpretive understanding.
Right, yeah.
It's an allegory.
Yeah,
Allegory is like a story that alludes to some.
yeah. But anyways, I don't want to interrupt.
And I personally, I feel that this, your impression of the temple is mine as well here. It's just so amazing. It's very inspiring. The devotees here are, I would consider, traditionalists. And it's inspirational for so many young men.
Right.
I'm in Toronto, and I don't see the same level of...
Oh, yeah, it's not, yeah.
But they're very liberal. Like, and most of the
Right,
temples
but-
that are suffering are very liberal.
Okay, so within this group, we could say that they're off, or whatever you want to say about them. But my point is, get some common ground. not just say, you're off. Because that's the conclusion I hear for all sorts of things. Oh, we're okay, they're off. And if you get that kind of relationship, I mean, now even they'll go to these, I see pictures all the time because I check in the Google News under the phrase Hare Krishna every day. So I get all these interfaith meetings, devotees are going to interfaith meetings. So they're trying to work out some common ground with the Christians, the Muslims, the Hindu. But that's all I'm asking here is why do you don't have common ground even with devotees? And instead of maybe, like I say, these other issues that have happened in the past would have not developed if you didn't have these kind of separations, like I gave New York City as an example. But you can go on.
But is it not one of Prabhupada's principles that we're interested more in quality than quantity? I appreciate your mood of wanting to benefit everyone with Krishna consciousness, and chanting altogether is great. We
Right.
don't have to change anyone's, weird concept of themselves, their gender, or anything like that. We can chant,
Right.
and I think the devotees do that. But I think we have to. My personal opinion is that we have to be really careful that it doesn't
Yeah.
get watered down, and,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
that
And that's-
we
I'm
present things as it is,
Yeah.
and that we bring them to our level instead of going down to their level.
That's okay.
Yeah?
He specifically talked about he'd like to see more cooperation, a more cooperative spirit
Right.
in the movement itself.
Yeah.
Among the devotees, right?
Right.
Mhm.
I'm not saying I have any kind of plan, but if we can just talk about it, I found out just getting things out in the ether, then a time might come where people will actually become sane and reasonable instead of sectarian. So, I mean, that's as far, maybe you accept that Prabhupada wanted a big house where everybody could come in. He didn't say that therefore the lowest is going to water down the highest. It shows weakness if you're afraid. That's what I see. If you're afraid to have somebody because you think you're going to lose or you're going to become compromised or you're going to decrease your own standing and your own practice, that shows weakness. So I'd rather deal in a position of strength. If I say to somebody that I'm not afraid, what are you afraid of? And then they'll say, then they might even say that, yeah, we are afraid. So that's the thing about Mrgendra, that we have no fear. So why is it that somebody who's a leader of a spiritual movement is afraid? So we have to get those people off of that level of fear. A lot of times they'll make explanations of things, and it's based on fear. It's not based on love. That's all I'm saying. You have two choices at every second. Either you're acting out of fear or you're acting out of love, which Prabhupada would say either you're acting for Krishna or Maya. So that's, what were you going to say there?
I just one other point. So you would therefore agree with, there's in Chaitanya Charitamrita in Chapter 7, Srila Prabhupada in Chapter 7 of the Chaitanya Charitamrita explains how he's been criticized for,
Right.
specifically for bringing young girls and young boys together
Right.
in the temples.
Right.
And one of the points there that was, I think, for me anyway, was most significant is that Prabhupada said that you can't change their lifestyle or their habits right away.
Right.
That it's a gradual process.
Right.
And that I think, is that what you're saying? So that we
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Prabhupada, even those people you're talking about that he criticized, he wanted them to come to Mayapur, let's join together. They didn't come, but he went at least out of way a little bit to try to say, let's get together. you can help me, I'll pay for your airfare to America. He'd say, I'll take care of everything, you don't have to worry, to this sannyasi God brothers. I'll take care of it, you come to America and preach, okay? But they're the ones you just mentioned that he's criticized because they might have said something about, oh, Swamiji, he's trying to change everything from Hindu to some kind of liberal American type New Age thing, but getting, like you say, women initiated and giving the Gayatri mantra to women, whatever the criticism was, based on what you're saying, that he's not traditional. So he didn't come as traditional, you just said that.
Sorry, what was that?
Prabhupada didn't come as traditional because he adapted things for the time, place, and manner that he was coming to New York.
But wasn't his objective to
Right, ultimate objective, right.
bring them into Krishna consciousness and
Right.
then imbibe in them that tradition?
Right, that's the ultimate goal, yeah. But still, even though people were criticizing him, he wanted them to join together. So I want people to join together, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we're watering down and that you got to compromise. There's no reason to compromise except in politics. Politics is the art of compromise. And that's why nothing happened in Washington in the last 20 years. Before that, the Democrats and the Republicans, they were all willing to compromise. And then they wouldn't be criticized back home because they gave up on some kind of principle of conservatism or liberalism. So then now they won't compromise because if they go back home, they're going to be primaried. You know what primaried means? It's in Canada, maybe you don't know.
Primary?
Primaried.
No.
It means if they go back to conservative district, they're going to be, even in the primary election against people on their own party, they're going to find, if they're conservative, somebody that will go to the more right of them and say, well, this guy, he's sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So then this other person who's more conservative will win. So they're thinking now, I can't compromise because I'll be primaried.
Mm-hmm.
So that's called sectarian, and things don't happen because nobody's ready to compromise on anything. I'm not saying you compromise on the main principles and say, like you said, some other Bhagavad Gita. I'm not talking about Prabhupada criticized some other, I'm not talking about accepting somebody else's Bhagavad Gita. So, but if you just one thing and you don't compromise on anything, then, and everybody's like that, you end up like Washington, D.C. I don't know if you heard what's happening in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for bringing it up.
How does Hare Krishna, how does this work if you
Okay.
you just take everyone and we just accept everyone, and you say it won't compromise the standards. But a main reason why there is life here and
Right.
things are going on well is because there is an insistence on certain standards that Srila Prabhupada gave.
Right.
And if we say, well, okay, you can join the temple, and you don't have to get up in the morning, or you don't have to chant 16.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there are other groups, they don't come here and join, but at least,
Oh, well, okay, so I misunderstood. What,
Yeah, I
what
don't-
are you talking about?
yeah, I don't think I
exactly?
said that. I said, let's try to find out things we can do together, let's say.
Mm.
Not that you're changing your morning program, but
But
maybe there's a
if we
festival.
accept everyone,
Hmm?
if we accept devotees with different outlooks,
it's not a question of acceptance. It's a question of, let's get together in the middle of California for a festival, or let's get together and talk. We used to have something called Istagosti. Did you ever have that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, they don't have that anymore in temples I've gone to. And Prabhupada started that program called Istagosti, devotees speaking together. Now, the only people that speak together are devotees within a temple. They might speak together or their friends. And then on other levels, there's like arguments. I don't know what's going on. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about accepting anybody. I'm talking about speaking to them.
Yeah, good point. I agreed with that. You're talking about traditionalists and
Right.
liberal, but if you look at the history, that you're talking about, you use the word schism.
Yeah, I think
Is
it's
that how
now
you say
schism.
schism or
Yeah,
schism?
yeah.
It depends whether you're American or British.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure which is which.
Oh, okay.
But the history is
Right.
that certain persons, like myself, who I identify as traditionalists, have wanted to have an open discussion on certain topics
With
But-
GBC people or
with GBC.
No, I'm not
people.
talking about just GBC, because
Well, that's where the decisions are made, and although
The
mostly people don't care, most devotees say, well, I don't care about the GBC, or,
yeah, a lot of that.
but their decisions,
Huh,
you may not care for them individually or as a body, but their decisions
right,
have tremendous effects throughout the movement.
correct.
So, I mean, if we go back to the previous century, Jivan Mukta, GHQ, that was politically railroaded. There was no we were discussing how to discuss with the GBC about the incoming influence of feminism
Yeah,
within ISKCON.
okay.
And that was politically, what's the word you use? Blackballed. Yeah.
Political incorrect, politically
Yeah,
incorrect.
there was no discussion.
Right.
And even
yeah,
you also mentioned about female Diksha Guru, Vaishnavi, or whatever you call
Right.
it. But there has to date never been open, neutral, monitored, what's the word, refereed,
mediated.
mediated discussion about this.
Okay, I've been able to monitor and mediate different discussions, but I don't do that with GBC people because I don't want to deal on that level of politics.
Yeah,
I'm talking about people of sincere heart. In America, let's say, you start here. I don't know so much about the rest of the world. If you say, we want to discuss this issue, there's going to be a lot of people who want to discuss it. Maybe not the GBC people, they may not show, but a lot of people, they're what's called game. They're really interested in discussing that. So those people we're interested in. We're not interested in like when you go preach, you're not interested in Jehovah's Witnesses because they're told, do not read those books, do not buy those books. So the GBC people have been told, and they promised to the other GBC people, we will not publicly go against your statements. So they're stuck. We want to talk to people who are not stuck, who are not in a fixed position, who are not bound. See, so that's what's going on now, yeah? Oh, okay. I thought it was right next to me here.
In my mind, I'm a bit confused about your statements because
Okay.
you seem to be discussing different things. One thing is when we go out and preach, we don't
Okay, well,
we don't try to tell people, okay, surrender your life on the spot.
that's one thing, yeah.
Give up
Yeah.
all the sinful activities. That's one thing. And
One
then there's
thing.
another thing is
The other thing is
within
devotees.
Vaishnava society.
Right, yeah.
As this topic has come up about female Diksha Gurus and this and that, I see that this is not the main underlying issue. The main underlying issue is what is the direction of our movement? What do we see? What is the vision? And how are we going toward it? Because it doesn't seem that there is any clear idea of that, and we seem to be more and more merging into the broader ethos of the greater society
Right.
around us,
Okay.
rather than giving the alternative.
Right, so some people are sincere enough to talk and not just.
Who are they?
They're not
Where are they?
bound. They're not bound. No, a lot of people that are not on the GBC.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Like you say.
But a lot of the power, let's say, in America is with people who are not members. Even some temple presidents are independent.
Oh, yeah, less so now because.
I know, it's less because some are.
It used to be when
Yeah.
the Prabhupada disciples, it was the American temple presidents
Right.
who overthrew the zonal acharya system.
Right.
But nowadays, because they're all disciples of GBC members.
Not all of them, but.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
not
New-
in LA, not
Not in
in.
New York, not in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But,
So that's changed. But then it's going to change again in a few years when all of us are all, well, I'll be in hell and you'll be in Vaikuntha, but anyway, we won't be around.
that's
And
why we
then-
got to do it now.
And then, then there'll be a whole new, we don't know, who will be the big figures in 10 years' time? It won't be the present GBC members because they'll all
Oh,
be,
yeah,
they'll all be
gonna
retired and
yeah,
gone.
Yeah.
So anyway, huge discussions you've opened up, Pandora's box, so to speak. But I don't think it's so simple as Larry King, why can't we all get together? Was it Larry King said, why can't we all get on
No.
together?
That was Rodney King,
Ronnie King.
because he was the one who was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying yesterday, you're having the panel discussion, you're all mentioning names, I don't know who they are,
Okay.
half of them.
Should I tell him who Rodney
Like
King?
if I talk about here about Mamata Banerjee, you've heard of Mamata Banerjee, right?
I think she's in West Bengal.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well,
Chief-
if you told me the name of the governor of Georgia or something,
Yeah,
if you just said the name, I wouldn't have a clue.
but
so.
I'm in Maya and I read newspapers, so. But
Anyway, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Should I tell
Ronnie
him?
King.
Should I tell him who Rodney King is? Because otherwise they wouldn't understand it.
Ronnie King was a guy who was beaten up by the LA cops for being a black, basically, and that
Right,
triggered
yeah.
riots, and
Riots,
this and that. And then he said, "Why can't we all just get on together?"
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I guess.
But the riots were not because he was beaten by the cops. It was a letting out of frustration. What I'm saying is there are a lot of complex issues underlying.
No, the riots happened the same day or the day after. The cops did not get convicted.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, my point is that we
Yeah.
can say, why can't we all just get along together? But there are a lot of underlying issues.
That's a higher concept. I'm just talking about maybe we can't get along together, but let's get together and talk anyways.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
great,
maybe there'll be
great.
some progress.
Yeah.
So that's,
I've been advocating that, but I don't know. The time seems to have passed when it's even possible. So, Hare Krishna. Anyway, we're here and we're doing something, and we're not officially in ISKCON, but
I know.
but we're not. What's the word? Antagonistic, or
Right.
we're not trying to show that you're all bogus or something like.
Right,
We're just doing what we're doing, and anyone who wants, they can come and join. That's all.
yeah.
There will be differences within society, and that in the Vedic culture, which Srila Prabhupada wanted to establish, that is allowed for by Varnashram, different Varnas. The Brahmanas practice very
Oh, yeah,
strictly, the
yeah.
Kshatriyas less, Vaishyas less, Shudras less, but they're all organized to cooperate. That's not necessarily ideologically,
Right.
but you were talking about Orthodox, conservative, Reformed Jews, and this and that. What I understand in Judaism, which is similar to traditional Hindu society, is that there's more emphasis on orthopraxy rather than orthodoxy. In other words, you have to follow. You might not even believe all these things in Judaism, what they teach, but you have to follow to be a Jew, right? You may not believe, but you're a Jew if you go along with your what's it called, bar mitzvah and all this kind of thing. You just,
Well, the
That's fine.
Orthodox,
so in Hinduism
Yeah.
also, you're supposed to, Hinduism, quote unquote, you're supposed to follow all these things.
right,
You have to follow the rules of dharma, and there are certain rules that you have to
right,
follow
yeah,
for which govern your behavior. But ideologically, there can be huge differences, which is why we see the Shankara followers and the Vaishnavas, they're all in the same culture, but they have huge ideological differences,
Oh, yeah.
but they all follow the same culture. Anyway, big topics.
We have the Vishnu Chitta here. What do we have, like 5, 6 minutes left, or?
Yeah, we have like 4 minutes.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
that's Prabhu's. I think he's just arriving. One example that comes to my mind is in Transcendental Diary. Hari Shauri Prabhu relates an incident of how one of the Gaudiya Math temples had invited some of our devotees, Prabhupada's disciples at the time, to to spend some time with them, take lunch, and come back. And Prabhupada was simply furious. In fact, even though the devotee who went there, yes, I'm not sure what incident you're referring to, Guru Maharaj. This is in Mayapur. Yes. Yeah, and at least the initial perception that the disciples got was that, they were praising, they were saying, oh, you have converted so many low-class men, something like this.
Oh, yeah.
And but Prabhupada was completely furious.
Right,
One of the things he also asked them is, he said, did you, did they invite you for lunch? And did you eat there? Did they give you
Oh.
prasadam? And they said yes. And then Prabhupada said, did they ask you to pay? And then the reply was yes.
pay,
And Prabhupada slammed the desk and said, you fools, you went there to a place where your spiritual master is being offended. You're so dumb that you don't realize that your spiritual master is being offended. And not only did you not realize your spiritual master was offended, you paid to eat there. And he just threw them all out of the room. He was so furious. Because there is a possibility that sometimes what could be seen as an innocent just get-together of devotees can influence devotees in a very negative manner.
Well, I want it
and
to happen
this-
before they get to the stage of their, like you say, they're criticizing the spiritual master of some disciples. I'm not saying you go to those people who are blaspheming or whatever. You're talking about the difference.
Well, I mean, it tends to happen. I mean, we have an instance here also. Like, there's a particular devotee who was in law school in D.C., and the local authority there sends message after message after message after message that he should choose a bona fide spiritual master, and that he should only, and all he was doing was going and taking some prasadam at the temple.
Okay,
But that devotee, there's literally emotional, it's so evident what he's talking about and who he's referring to.
I don't
But-
know what that means, because,
Well, what I'm trying to say is sometimes, we try to interact with people on common grounds,
right,
but within devotee society, there are people who are envious, who use that simplistic and innocent interaction based on a common ground to have other agendas, and this does cause issues.
yeah, I'd rather say that if we can interact, we'll avoid them bad-mouthing people. And that's what I found in the past. When we interact with people, and your friends, at least you're relating to, they're not going to tend to badmouth you or your friends. Whereas when you say separated, then they get more and more bad-mouthing each other.
Sometimes it seems that the interaction causes more bad-mouthing than not. I mean, at least, we've had some experience of that. But on the other hand, just so you're aware, there's 2 devotees from the manor here right
Right,
now,
okay.
learning book distribution. And then the Budapest temple is sending, they've sent 2 devotees, they're planning to send another 8 devotees,
Oh, yeah, that's-
including the temple president.
That's good,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah, and then we just got a message from Bali, Indonesia,
okay.
saying that, we want to talk about your Sankirtana. I mean, I literally have the message, just arrived
Right.
this afternoon.
So that's good.
So we're trying to work on,
Yeah, you're doing.
on that,
You're doing. I'm not saying you're not
so.
doing. I'm mostly criticizing other people, I'm not criticizing you. You're doing more than other people. But I'm just saying that's what I'd like to see. I think that Prabhupada would like to see something like that, that's all. If I'm saying something different than what Prabhupada wants, just ignore it. I'm just trying to understand what Prabhupada wants at this situation. Now, some people might not care what Prabhupada wants. They have their own agenda, and they think they can change anything, whatever he said. But I'm talking about people who want to try to understand. Like the Christians say, what would Jesus do? They do that a lot. They haven't seen a car sticker. Isn't there a car sticker? What would Jesus do? So I always try to think, what would Prabhupada do? Like, what would Prabhupada do if he found out in West 55th Street and they only needed $90,000? I think that was the number, because the boiler would need a repair and the elevator wasn't working. But for $90,000, they lost the whole Manhattan. So that's all I'm talking about here. But you guys are doing a good job. I'm not criticizing. And you do have that hook because of the book distribution. People got to come to you now. It's a position of strength in that respect. They're coming to you. You're not going to them. But then now you can have a relationship more with Shivaram Swami. You can expand that, not just on the level of exchange of training book distribution. Let's talk to him. Okay, he's talking to us. Now we're going to talk to him. See?
Yeah, we're attempting to do that. I'm planning to visit the farm community and learn from the
Right,
Hungary
yeah,
and things like that.
that's what I'm
so.
saying. It's interaction, devotee exchanges, loving exchanges, nectar devotion, revealing things to devotees and exchanging gifts, and all of this has not been going on lately. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I think. Oh.
What would Jesus do? I read an account of a devotee. I can't remember exactly how it unfolded, but he was becoming a devotee or something like this. And he went with some people for a deer hunt.
A deer hunt. Huh.
Yeah, which is good Christian recreation
Right.
in some parts of America. And then it just suddenly struck him because he'd been associated with devotees. I can't remember his name. And then he asked the leader of the group, he said, what would Jesus do?
Right.
With the idea that it's obvious Jesus wouldn't shoot a deer. And the leader said, Jesus would shoot them right in the head. Your Jesus and our Jesus, the concepts of who he is. Just like Srila Prabhupada is often, it seems to be more and more conceptualized to be a nice old man who just patted down everyone on the head, encouraged them to chant Hare Krishna and do whatever you like. Because he's merciful like Jesus and he'll just deliver you whatever you do or say. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but we
Yeah,
can
well,
say,
people-
what would Prabhupada do? That's a very difficult question because
Oh, yeah.
Srila Prabhupada, he did so many, that was one of the things that well, you often use that phrase, isn't it? Predictably unpredictable about Srila Prabhupada. And Shama Sundar, he always said, whenever I go in Prabhupada's room, I knew that whatever I expect, it's going to be something different. And if I'm fixed on it's going to be something different, then it wouldn't be different because, but it was, it's amazing the circumstances that Srila Prabhupada dealt in. I once had a realization. I was walking in London. It must have been the early 1980s. And I was just walking on the street alone. I'd been living in India for some time, India, Bangladesh by that time. And it just struck me that what if I had to come here to London alone with what I know about Krishna now and try to start preaching Krishna consciousness with no one and nothing? Could I do it? And it's just obviously no. And I wouldn't know even where to start. Because we do have a Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. It's more difficult for us to see what Srila Prabhupada did, because we preach to people and people take up Krishna consciousness, but there was nothing, nobody, no idea. And what Srila Prabhupada worked with, it's the greatest miracle. Swamiji, do you do any miracles? They asked in Hyderabad, because Sai Baba was so popular, the miracle worker, and Prabhupada gestured to his Western disciples, these are my miracles. Hare Krishna. But it's, I'm almost finished composing a book about Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. It's quite a big book, more than 1,000 pages. And one of the topics there is very important to understand Srila Prabhupada, is what one scholar called his religious gradualism. How he started off very liberal, but he gradually introduced more and more rules, because he had an idea where he wanted to go, but he saw it wasn't possible in the beginning to bring that in, so he gradually brought in the rules. And he often quoted that, didn't he, that yena tena prakarena mana Krishna innovation. In the beginning, just bring people in, and then you bring them up. So, anyway, big topics. But what he tolerated in 1966, many of the things he didn't tolerate in 1976.
Right.
Or 1977. People were getting initiated. Umapati, he said, I was initiated in my cut-off Levi's. With long hair and a beard and everything, and there's no way you could get initiated in 70. They wouldn't even let you come to speak with Prabhupada, and he gave all his time and energy to them, overlooking that. So, Hare Krishna, that's important for an understanding Prabhupada's mood and mission. He wanted to create a class of brahmanas, which Allen Ginsberg was just, because he had some idea what brahmanas are, and he said, well, that's impossible.
And he called Swamiji, you're too conservative.
Yeah. Prabhupada didn't like that. He said, if I was conservative, I couldn't stay here a moment. Conservative by the standards of the culture he came from. But that plan was there, to create a class of brahmanas who could lead human society by their knowledge, their culture, their behavior. So like I say, in Varnashram there are divisions, so we can't expect everyone to be the same. But the brahmanas have to be on a very high level, seen as gods on earth, because they represent God on earth in their behavior, in their guidance, and everyone's supposed to listen to them, even if everyone can't come up to their level. They're supposed to give the guidance for human society. So we should all come together and chant Hare Krishna. Is that what you were saying?
That's part of it.
So,
but I also want some people to give you $4 million from all around. So
Okay, we'll give that service to you. You can organize, you can bring everyone together and collect all the money from them.
First, we'll talk to the certain people here, and then we'll figure it out.
What time is yours? It's supposed to be 5 o'clock. One thing about Nrsimhadev, he wasn't very empathetic with Hiranyakashipu. He didn't say, hey, let's talk about it. He just ripped him to pieces.
But he was a demon, yeah.
Let's have a peace meeting. Yeah, we'll rip you into pieces.
That's a good one. So somebody else is coming out? Okay, thank you.
Where's that mic at? We're missing a magnetic piece. I don't know how the hell did it.
Two, huh?
Huh?
Oh, no,
Oh, we
this
have
is the
one.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know what the hell happened to it.
I think I might have saw it here.
Easier, cut off.